name is Corina Hierro. I am the Global Startup Scout here at Techstars, and I am actually also a Techstars alum, as I did go through the Workforce Development Program back in 2021. Today, we're going to discuss how setbacks have shaped founders' entrepreneurial journeys and how they transform their mistakes into valuable lessons, basically how they embrace them as catalysts for growth. So feel free to leave us any of your questions in the Q&A box on the side, and we will be answering any questions that you guys have. So moderating today's event is Matt Kozlov. Matt, take it away.
Thank you, Corina. Hello, everybody. I'm Matt Kozlov. I'm a managing director at Techstars. I joined the firm almost 8 years ago and have been running different programs for Techstars over those 8 years. Today, I run the Techstars Healthcare Accelerator in partnership with Cedars-Sinai, Point 32, UC Irvine, and United Healthcare. I also run the Techstars Space Accelerator in partnership with NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab and the United States Space Force. And I run the Techstars Los Angeles program powered by JP Morgan. I've invested in over 130 companies at this point, and so I am no stranger to seeing founders navigate challenges, both successfully and sometimes unsuccessfully. But I think the one constant is that there's always some challenge or struggle in front of entrepreneurs, and the measure of an entrepreneur's skill is whether and how they're able to navigate those pitfalls. And so today we've invited 3 exceptional founders who are at different stages of their entrepreneurial career. Some have gone through Techstars, some haven't yet. But I love all 3 of them and what they're building. Joresa is I'll let each of the founders tell their own story, but I think what's particularly excellent, for me at least, is that on the panel today, we have a healthcare founder, an aerospace founder, and an e-commerce and retail founder, which are 3 of the categories that I invest and spend the most amount of my time in. So I'm really excited that everybody could be here today, and I'm pumped to have the folks watching participate through chat. So feel free to ask your questions of myself or of our founders along the way. So I will ask Joresa to kick us off. And Joresa, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do before starting GoFlyy, and then tell us about GoFlyy.
Thank you, Matt. So my name is Joresa. I was in Techstars last spring, 2022, and my company is GoFlyy, and we power at-home try-ons for fashion e-commerce brands. We launched in 2020 as a same-day delivery company for fashion, beauty, and wellness. Then we later added on reverse logistics, and then in Techstars, we kept getting that question of what makes you different, what makes you different. And so we had to find a different angle because, as we know, that our space of delivery is very crowded. And so that's when we added on the try-ons. I'm based here in Los Angeles. And do you want me to just do a quick intro and then we'll talk more about the business?
We'll talk more about everybody's business, yes.
Oh, there you go.
All right, Nyamitse, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what you're doing at Vital Audio?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Matt. And so happy to be here and share my experience in just being as a founder and just in the healthcare space. My name is Nyamitse-Calvin. I am a health tech founder. Prior to being a health tech founder, I was a clinical first responder, so worked initially in a non-traditional role in clinical research and transitioned into clinical management prior to actually founding Vital Audio. At Vital Audio, we are targeting readmissions and just lowering the avoidable and unplanned hospitalizations or hospital utilizations. And the way we're actually looking to, the way we're solving for this is we are building voice-based technologies for patient monitoring and screening. So to allow clinicians to have more objective data on how to route patients, whether you need to go to urgent care, to consult your primary, or just stay at home and follow your doctor's advice. So I'll pass it on to.
All right, Bosco, you're up.
Right, great to be here. My name is Bosco. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a space tech company called Little Place Labs. A bit of my background, I spent about 13 years in a global investment bank, really supporting investing in energy technologies and businesses. And then after all those years in a corporate, pivot into startups, getting my hands dirty and learning about what is going on with startups and all this hype. So spent a few years in a AI and an energy analytic company for a few years. And we started Little Place Labs really as part of when I and my co-founder and the early members of the team were in an executive MBA program in Oxford. So, when we went into those programs, we go, what are we going to do for the second half of our career that we can wake up and build something that is super exciting, super passionate about, and really, most importantly, making impact to the world. So that's the onset of Little Place Labs. What we do is a space tech company. So if you guys are all following, what's happening in space, there is a lot of satellites going up, capturing a lot of data, helping people looking and monitoring for events, threats, all kinds of things on ground. But a big challenge today is that users have to wait for a long time before they get their information from space. So let's say if you're a firefighter, you want to use space technology to help you look for fire and detect fire very quickly. Current solutions, you often have to wait for hours or even days, which doesn't really work. So our mission is to build solutions that can run in space and deliver that to the end users, the insights within a few minutes. So really, really helping end users in the commercial side, on the defense side, to do their job better in time-sensitive situations. So that's me.
All right. Wonderful. So I would love if everyone watching along with us today could also maybe drop a note in the chat just telling us a little bit about yourselves, and if you're an entrepreneur, what your company does. It would be helpful to know what the industry you guys are representing are, and maybe also where in the world you are. The reason why this topic, I think, resonated for me and why I wanted to lead this is that I think there's an unfortunate narrative in a lot of venture that we can all fall susceptible to, of the crushing it mentality, that everyone is always doing well and that you're falling behind, and if you're not raising your $20 million Series A within a year of starting your company, you're doing something wrong. And at least in my programs, my founders know that we're really embracing the journey, that we understand that it is not a linear or geometric curve, exponential up and to the right all the time, that it is zigzagging, and sometimes you got to go down to go up. And the way that we work through our challenges really speaks for everything. And the one constant of being an entrepreneur is you're going to have problems that you're working through, and some of them might be existential, that force you to shut down your business, and those are unfortunate. At least they're relatively rare within the Techstars community, and that's one of the things we do is we build as much ropes around our founders and scaffolding around our founders to give them the resources to be as successful as possible. But the main part is the journey and understanding our pitfalls and de-risking things along the way. So I'd love for each of you to maybe go around and share what were some of the biggest pitfalls and challenges, and maybe almost either actual failures that killed your company, or near failures that almost killed your company but managed to make you stronger by getting through them. So Joresa, you've probably had the most time to think about this, having gone through Techstars a few years ago, and I've probably had a lot of time to think about your challenges as well. So let's start with you, and then we'll go into Nyamitse and Bosco next, whose challenges I'm a little less familiar with yet.
Okay. If I'm missing any, let me know. I think I had a lot of challenges, both professionally and personally. We started Techstars March 21st last year. And I remember before starting having a conversation with one of my angel investors, my only angel investor, saying, hey, I don't know if we need to actually take all the money from Techstars because we're getting revenue. And he was like, no, I think you want to take the money and you want to have them on your cap table. I was like, really? I was like, okay, but we're like really making really great revenue. Well, thank God, because about 2 weeks into starting Techstars, we lost our biggest client. And I knew that it was a very sensitive thing. And I was like, we have to get some other clients, but I just did not. I ran out of time. I ran out of time before they jumped ship. They wanted to, and again, I am in a very saturated space at that time of just delivery. And during the pandemic, anybody who could have created a delivery company did, whether it was Ray Ray's on the corner or whether it was whomever, everybody was in the delivery space. And the competition of like pricing was just hard. And so they were like, we want the cheapest price. We're leaving. And it's like, oh, okay, we just lost a partner and several retailers. So thankfully, we did take the investment because that gave us a little bit more time to kind of figure out, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to replace this revenue? So, when that conversation of who are your competitors, it's not rhetorical. It's not just like a question to like challenge you or to annoy you. It's a real question. You got to know what's out there, because if you don't, it could potentially take part of your revenue. So that was one of the first things that that was a hurdle for us. If I could talk about, other things, hiring for, this is a little bit later, but, you want to move fast. You want to I'm a solo founder, so I was very used to doing a lot of things by myself, but I also wanted to release some of those things. And I hired some key people for my operations, and a lot of our revenue went to operations. I wasn't hiring for revenue generating roles. You want to do that. You want to do that, because it's connected to, we lost a client. Most of my team is operators, dispatchers. They're running the business. That's great. And you want that because you want the great quality, but you also want to have that sales pipeline always full. And again, that became challenging. It became challenging with losing a client, not having enough revenue generated roles, even though I am the main salesperson, but I'm also in an accelerator. And also realizing that around October, a few months after Techstars, realizing that the money that we were generating and bringing in from several clients was actually costing us money, and realizing that a little bit too late. And we had to actually let go of some clients. So we had some smaller floral clients that gave us business every single day. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough. When you started to look at the numbers and you're like, okay, this is coming in. Yeah, but this is what's going out. And it's like, oh, okay. I literally did full stop in October 2022 and said, unfortunately, we love working with you, but we're going to have to pause right now until we figure this out. And it was really the best decision for us to let those clients go, because it was costing us money in the long run. And it seemed, I mean, if you're raising capital and we didn't raising capital and you have that cushion, then, maybe you can keep those clients. But for us, I had always been very focused on revenue. And so I looked at it and it just didn't make sense. That leads me to another point of mindset for fundraising. So I had a lot of things going on personally. I got married, and that ended very quickly, crash and burn. And as a solo founder, I didn't have that number two. And so I was trying to go out and raise, and also going between, do I want to focus on revenue? Do I want to focus on getting venture capital? I think what I learned in that moment is that you have to be very clear what you want. when you're straddling the fence of, do I want to get venture capital? I know a lot of people have, have really bad things to say about, taking venture capital. And some people have very good things to say. Just be very clear with yourself what you're going to go after. And just make sure that you have the support. If you're working with Matt, you're working with anywhere, ask for that support, because I mean, I have gotten a lot of intros, a lot of help with the Techstars community, but don't straddle the fence. Decide if you're going to raise, get everything together, get your strategy together, get your list together, get your contacts together, run a tight ship, talk to other founders. I've talked to several founders about what do they think, got them to that raise, confidence, having a tight schedule, doing intro calls with investors, and them leading the intro call, not letting the investor lead the intro call, but them actually talking to them as, hey, I want to make sure you're the right match for me. So just, if you're going to do it, be in the mindset of, I'm going to raise, and then make the plan and definitely do it. So that was one of the things that was definitely a hurdle for me, because I just was a little unsure of which way I wanted to go. And, it just doesn't, the universe just doesn't respond the way you're going to want it to.
Thank you, Joresa. I'm going to come back to you for some more, but I'm going to give your vocal cords a break for a minute. A lot of really interesting topics. I'm going to want to come back to the firing customers and paring off bad revenue, because I think that's a really counterintuitive lesson for a lot of early stage founders who are just begging, borrowing, and stealing to get their KPIs up and to the right. And revenue growth can sometimes be an all-consuming objective, and I think sometimes realizing maybe, but it has to be the right revenue is really important. Nyamitse, I'm going to ask you, open-ended question. What are some of the biggest failures or pitfalls or challenges that you've learned from in your business?
So so I'll start first with with my background. So I come from a very technical, clinical background, and I think being a person who is coming from a technical background, my number one focus of when I was set my mind, we're going to do this, was really keeping my head down and building without more of the stakeholders who would potentially be the people who would not only advocate, the early adapters, or people who were going to actually help you propel to the next step. And that I ended up coming to learn very quickly in a harsh reality of just changing the way you actually build, instead of building in silo, understanding how to actually have these more in-depth conversation about the process, the challenges, how much is being spent in X amount of work that is actually creating a problem, and it's actually costing your customer to actually do their work and the time that it actually goes. So majority of the time I just had put my head down. And I remember when I actually spoke with one of who actually serves as my mentor today too, was I had a chat with him, and the first minute of the meeting, he stopped me and said, go and talk to customers. And I actually stopped everything. I started from zero, and it actually changes your perspective as a person who's actually building. You'll see a whole different world of pain and frustration, and that hair on fire, that it will give you more clarity. But I was just building with what I already had in mind, and that was not the healthiest approach on how to navigate the space of starting a venture and scaling it up. So that's one. The other one, one of the biggest realization that I actually ended up learning is in the process of you building and speaking to customer, and also securing partnerships where they were relevant. One of the big things that I ended up learning is that not all partnerships are the right partnerships. You might have a partnership that will give you X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't get you from point A to B. So what are you doing to actually account for, like, what kind of partnership are you going to embrace, and what kind of partnership are you just going to put at an arm's length? Maybe they might not serve you today. Maybe they'll serve you when you're down the line 2 years ahead. But you have to be able to really, really sit down, reflect on, like, understanding your partner's expectation and your own expectation, and like really putting them down to actually a place of like initiating that execution instead of continuously seeking like partnership. There was a point in time that I was like, my objective was to get more sites to actually pilot with, to collaborate with. And on the hindsight, there's much more that has to go into just like securing a partnership. You have to come up with strategy. You have to understand how they work. Not every partner works the same way you actually envision. And it's not one shoe fits all. So I ended up backtracking to some of the partnerships that I secured. And I was like, yeah, at this time, this would not serve any purpose, like a meaningful purpose to actually get us to meet this OKR or this objective and make sure we actually achieve these key results that we have set for ourselves. So be mindful of how you also navigate the space of like who I want to collaborate with, and understand that at some point it's not always the quantity, it's more of the quality of that partnership and how you actually navigate and grow and make sure that partnership helps you get from point A to B. And one of the other point that Joresa mentioned, which was on hiring. One of the key themes that I've continuously heard throughout the journey is hire slow, fire fast. And also because the thing is, the people you work, you have to learn who they are in depth. These are the people that you share bed with. And when I say bed, I mean, you wake up in the morning, you think of each other, you actually go to bed, you're like, so-and-so has something to do. I get calls from my co-founder at 2 a.m. and I'm like, yeah, we'll get to that in the morning. And so like, these are people that you're going to be sharing beds. You're going to cry together. You're going to laugh together. You're going to go through all the ups and downs. So it's better to have like a very tight, small team, but a team that you can trust, a team that you can actually understand each other and work together. So those were like my big challenges as I was starting the journey. Yes.
All right, a lot of really interesting points there that resonate deeply with me. In healthcare, it's a complicated market where your customer is not necessarily the person who uses your product. You've got payers, you've got providers, and you've got patients. If you've got a solution that you're selling into a clinical team, it might need the IT team to also sign off on it and the finance team to sign off on it. And you have to prove that it either directly makes money or saves money. And it's so confusing because for almost every healthcare founder in the world, you can't just do that customer discovery easily, because it's not like when you have that many stakeholders, they're just lining up telling you exactly what they need you to do in order for them to write a check. Often they're not actively looking for a solution. The person you're pitching it to isn't the person who's going to pay for it. It's probably one of the most challenging customer sales cycles that I've ever been a part of. The good news is if you can get through it, it's very sticky revenue and you can make a huge impact on patients' lives and physician efficiency. And I hope that Nyamitse, all the partnerships that you have decided to focus on help get you there. But, you do need those pilots in the early stages. You do need to demonstrate to future customers as well as new, existing customers that your solution works, and they don't believe it until they see it in real life in a facility that's as close to theirs as possible. Now, the challenge I've seen is that even if the pilot goes well, they still might not pay for it. And so you have to have these conversations. And this is true in every industry when you're scoping out a pilot. but you really need to understand with your partner or your client, okay, what does success look like for this pilot? What are the objective metrics that if we hit them together, you're going to become a customer? Or is it not going to become a customer relationship? And at least get that out of the way so that you're not working towards different objectives. Whenever I work with my companies, I try to tell them to not think of their first phase as a pilot, but rather as phase one of a multi-phase implementation, where phase one might not be paid, but I never want it to end after the phase one unpaid part. And so you have to I'm always cautious of the word pilot. And then that one size fits all. Once you've sold to one health system, you've sold to exactly one health system. And what worked there does not necessarily work in another one. But you do need that traction there in order to open the doors in some of the other health systems.
Yeah.
And so Techstars can be very helpful because we do have clinical partners in Cedars-Sinai, UC Irvine, and payer partners in United Healthcare Point 32 to make that sales cycle a little bit easier and to get that customer access a lot easier. But it is a hard industry, and I am very, proud and thankful to every healthcare founder who makes it, because it's a challenge. Bosco, I'm going to throw to you.
Great. These are great sharing. Maybe I'll just step back a little bit. I think, last night when I was thinking about, this panel and just really doing some personal reflection, something came into mind. When I talk to other people and say, hey, what are your setbacks? What are your, failure that leads to where you are today? Some people, and a lot of them, can give me really dramatic examples, right? I've failed in 3 startups, 5 startups, bankruptcy, X, Y, and Z. And I look at myself and I thought about it really hard, and I go, very, very thankfully, I have not experienced such a dramatic, failure or chapter in my life. But it doesn't mean that I haven't encountered failure. They just come in smaller packages, and and it could be good or bad. Like, the good thing, obviously, is it doesn't hit you in the face and it just gets really hurt and bruised. But the bad thing is it may not be as easy to notice, and you can't really see them unless you're really spending the time sitting down, thinking about it, looking at all the ups and downs, and really make meaning out of it before it becomes too late of a big punch. So again, it's quite interesting as that feedback where it's very important to just sit back, and even when things are seemingly well, being able to sit back and look at, is it really well? Is there some things that we're not seeing? Or is it well, but is it the right direction? But that was a pretty interesting thing that I kind of came up with yesterday, very thankfully. But anyways, speaking about our startup, I think, there's a little bit of a difference in terms of our startup because me and my co-founder and, the founding team came in from different background, and we all had, 15 plus years in whatever we were doing, to a certain level, quite successful. We've accomplished, in our own domain. And we came into a new area or a new arena of space. Maybe it's a little similar to kind of the health sector, right? We talk about old space, new space. New space is more open to people. But, early days when we were looking at this a few years ago, we were still being seen as outsiders. We don't have the, hey, I came from 15, 20 years of NASA, all these crazy logos on our slides. And when we start to engage people at an early stage, some of the feedback is it's not as direct as why are you here? But you can see that, hey, what are you guys doing? Why don't you go back to, banking or whatever we're doing? So there are some times that we go, hey, do we belong in this room? Do we belong in this group? Do we belong in this conversation? Are we fitting? But then obviously what we look at is, no, we want to do this. This is exactly what we want to do. This is a sector that is super exciting, not just from an economic point of view, but, space is really cool. We're just passionate about it. And so what we did is we utilized the year of 2020 during COVID to really equip ourselves and learn what is happening in this market, right? So how we do it is we went from the basic. We went in to join hackathons, challenges, programs, literally competing with, 15-year-old, 7-year-old kids that are coming into the hackathon, and really try to learn and start to build the connection there. Some of them got rejected. Some of them we move along a bit further, but we just keep trying, right? We kind of, Techstar has this thing called mentor magic, intensive weeks of talking to people that are experienced in domain and startup, and you really get feedback. So at that time, we kind of built our mini mentor magic, right? Just literally go out to LinkedIn, look for people that are interested or interesting that we should be talking to, and really get feedback to equip ourselves. So we spent a whole 2020 really doing that, equipping ourselves, getting ourselves up to speed. And finally, after quite a few hackathons, challenges, programs, we cracked the first milestone by winning a global space tech challenge called Gravity Challenge. It's organized by Deloitte and AWS. And we won that challenge after working with them for 8 months. And what that did was, one, we got very good connections through that challenge, working with these industry leaders. Two is we have built up our validation of, hey, yeah, we didn't come from a background with like 20 years of experience, but there is something that we're bringing in onto the team. We're bringing something on the table, and how do we expand that and build on that? Not everyone has to have that NASA logo. I mean, if there's a team that's amazing, but not everyone has that. So we won that challenge, and we really kind of give ourselves that validation. Hey, we can actually bring something to the table as a team. We can contribute as individual. Let's do this. And so that's when 2021 we started the company, and really go from there. But it still wasn't an easy decision. A few of us has to decide to leave our job, and we all have young family. We were still in school, part-time doing our executive MBA. So every day you kind of sit there and go, why are we doing this, right? And you look at kind of your old colleagues that are still doing well and kind of like getting off at a reasonable time, and you just have to ask yourself, like, why and why and why. And the word why is super important. I mean, ultimately, whatever we're building, the product and whatnot, it's ultimately we always have to go back to why are we doing this. And sometimes it's about, I really want to make this world a better place, or I just really see a gap in the health industry, or whatever it is, right? But you always have to remember that that's the North Star, and you got to drive yourself towards that. Because as a founder and a startup, I'm sure all you guys would agree, is that if you look things in kind of like a daily basis, you are just riding a roller coaster. I mean, for example, this morning wasn't a particularly good day, right? But it was very fitting to get into this panel to talk about it. But you got to learn how to step back and look at the bigger picture, like the trend of what we're doing, and is that really pointing us to the North Star? So kind of that's just some reflection, and maybe I can add one more point is, I'm not here because of myself, right? Like, I have people around me. I have a co-founder. I have a founding team. I have my friends. It is really, really important for us to have what I call the couch. That is like a safe space. You can just go, I don't care anymore. Let me just like fall back, lie down. I don't know, like just be able to feel comfortable and have that support system. So your couch could literally be the couch in your living room, or it could be your friends or your family or your Techstar buddies, or other founders that are not in your industry at all. I try to build that rapport because we do need support from time to time. We need to be able to share and talk of our concerns, our wins and losses. So that's really, really important. And I mean, yeah, I'm looking for it. We're actually going to start our Techstar journey next week. So I've already been hearing, Matt and the team saying Techstar is for life. The people that are within your, cohort is going to be, some of your best friends. Really looking forward to that.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to reflect on a couple things you mentioned there, Bosco. The first is I want to acknowledge that none of you guys on this panel have experienced the kind of catastrophic failure that people write books or movies about, right? Like, not only have you not experienced like major failure, like your companies are all still going, you've learned from it. And thankfully, is all for, on behalf of all of your investors. But for many people watching this now or in the future, that might not be the case. And listen, I had a failed startup that didn't make any money, and it's a blow. But what I do want to sort of first acknowledge, because failure is a very very loaded word, like emotionally. Like, there's the failure of your business, and some of that may have been in your control, some of it may not have been. I'm sure there are external factors that are, prevent many businesses or most businesses from ever really being successful. But just from personal experience, when your company fails, it's hard to take the emotion out of that and to interpret it as anything less than your own personal failure, like you did something wrong, like there's something wrong with you. And I just want to acknowledge before we move on that, like, your company failing is just a moment in time on one venture and speaks a little bit about something you did. It has nothing to do with who you are as a person, nothing to do with what you're capable of, nothing to do with your character. And it doesn't really even have that much to do with your reputation. I want everyone who's watching this to know that, like, you are not your company. That if for some reason things don't go well with your venture, you will do something else amazing. That no matter what, like, your company is not the most important part of your life. It is not what will define you and your reputation in the future. How you treat other people matters. How you raise a family matters. The impact you have over the course of your entire life matters. Your startup that may have failed, it's just a moment in time. So I just want, I've seen a lot of founders whose companies did not work out, and sometimes it can be a real struggle to figure out how to move on from there. And the reality is, for me, I don't think I'd be doing anything that I've been doing over the last 8 years if I hadn't had my personal experience with my own startup. And so much of that shaped me. And so I think that if you can really embrace that we're always evolving mindset and every challenge is just a new obstacle that we're going to get through and make us stronger, it will make you all better founders. And I also want to say that you don't have to be a founder. There's nothing wrong with taking a job at another startup that maybe you didn't start, or at a corporation or a venture fund or Techstars or anywhere else. Like, I think the role of CEO or entrepreneur has been glamorized past the point of healthiness. And I think it's really important to understand that there's nothing wrong taking a great job in banking or in retail or at a health system or at NASA or at Techstars. Like, there's so many other ways to have meaningful value. And then the last thing I'll say is that we have life outside of work too. Our own self-worth and our impact on this planet and our life well lived should not be defined by what we do professionally. Those of us who get great personal fulfillment out of our work, I think that's wonderful, but I think that is not necessarily something that we deserve, or that is something that we are entitled to. I think making a living and finding your purpose, whether it's with friends or family or hobbies, is a life well lived. And I just want to give like a little bit of like pressure that like your company is not your life. Anyway, moving on. I want to make sure that people in the chat have questions. I want to make sure that we're opening it up to others before I continue asking more questions. I'll keep my eyes on the chat, but I'd love to hear any like fundraising pitfalls that you guys may have had, mistakes you made when going out to raise. And I know you guys are all quite early and haven't raised that much capital, so maybe it's not fair for this group. But if there are topics around fundraising that you'd like to bring up, I'm also happy to provide feedback on fundraisers that have gone well, fundraisers that have not gone well, advice I give to founders, et cetera, to optimize success. Oh, there's a QA box that I was not aware of somewhere in here. I don't know how to access that. So if someone at Techstars wants to help me moderate some of the Q&A, that would be helpful. Oh, nope, now I found it. Okay, given the VC investment, Let's assume the business generates enough revenue to provide some runway. In this case, the VC will likely increase your chance of success and growth rate. What should a founder consider before deciding between bootstrapping or VC funding? Great question. Raising from venture capitalists is not the right answer for every startup. In fact, for many, it's the wrong answer. And for some of the companies here today, grant funding or revenue funding can get you really far before you have to give up equity. Debt funding for hardware companies is another option. Joresa, you bootstrapped quite a bit before you even joined Techstars. So I'd love to give your perspectives on, is raising from VCs always the right answer?
It's not for everyone. I think you have to figure out if it's right for you. And then also, I think the other big question is, when is it right for you? I think about, again, trying to raise funding after Techstars, not really being 100% which way I should go, revenue or VC funding. And also because we were still so heavily doing the delivery and returns, if I had taken money at that time, I think I would have continued to go down that path. And that wasn't the right path, because once you take that money, from what I've heard from other founders, it's really go time. You really got to start moving. And I mean, you're moving before, but they want those updates. They want to know, they want to get the ROI. And so I think I would have succumbed to the pressure of, I have these people's money, I need to have this ROI, I need to keep driving down this path. I don't know, I could be wrong. But I do think I would have tried to stay down that path, and it wasn't the right path for me. So the business has shifted, and because we leaned out a lot, I let go of some people that was great. It was actually, it was heartbreaking, but it was great because they weren't the right people for this part of the business. And so I just had the time and the space to do that. Now I'm in a position whereas I need top talent, I need to grow, I need to move faster. This is the right time. But last year it wasn't. And I think what was getting into my head was, but everybody in my cohort is raising funds and they're raising money and I feel behind. And it's not, please don't get caught up in that. That's not the issue. Give yourself the time to do it in your timing. Don't try to keep up with other people.
Bosco, Nyamitse, anything to add to that question?
I think. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. I think just going back to the earlier point, I think someone mentioned it, is about scenario planning. So, if you think that if you have revenue coming in and you have a pretty strong pipeline, just kind of build the buffer, right? Like if that doesn't happen, then what do you need? And also for fundraising, we're actively fundraising right now, but again, be very clear on why do you need that dollar. You don't, explaining to investor why do you need that dollar is secondary. You first have to explain that to yourself. So really thought through, with yourself and the team, like why do you need it and what are you going to need it for, and be very clear on that and build some buffer, plus and minus to make sure that, your scenario planning is done right. Yeah.
I will comment that the worst answer to why are you fundraising is because I need money or else I'm going to run out of money. I cannot tell you how many companies decide to open up a round of capital because they're almost out of money. Investors are not going to want to fund a company that is on the verge of going out of business. The best time to be raising is when you don't need the money and you've got growth, and money will help you go faster. Nyamitse?
Yeah, I was going to add on that. I think there's that saying that they say, do the right thing at the right time, at the right place. And I think that has been taken lightly, but it's applicable in almost every aspect of like planning and going ahead. I think understanding first, exploring all the other resources that you don't have to like just jump into the VC space immediately. Like there's one of the things that I love is really non-dilutive funding. So if you have opportunity to like go into competitions that actually fit your space. If you have times to actually tap into, there's a lot of like SBIRs, understanding like where do you fit, what shoes is like the best fit for you. Tapping into those spaces will help you like really create a runway until the time when you actually know like, I'm ready to actually raise if you need to. And that's the if you need to. The other key piece is that it's okay to build relationships with like VCs, but not necessarily for like, just because you're talking to VC does not mean you are raising. You can actually start creating that path, that relationship, that when it comes to actually having that conversation, you already have a foundation compared to like rushing in, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. And then you are not only putting yourself, first impressions actually also go a long way. If you come to me at a point which you're not ready, and you just need the money just to say you actually raised or anything, not a good picture. And as well as what Matt said about raising because you're running out of money, that is not the best way to actually go about going to a VC route. Yeah, I'd say.
All right, let's do another question. I think someone at Techstars is going to press a magic button. Here we go. How does a founder know when it's time to shut down their startup? I don't know if that's for me or for you guys. I will start with my high-level answer. The first question, I think, is when is it time to pivot? Because I think if you can figure out a pivot that will help you hone in on a more viable business, then you should do that. Take whatever runway you have, shut down the conversations that you're having around one business. It can be really hard, back to Joresa's earlier point, to like say goodbye to revenue. I've had companies literally take profitable businesses that they did not believe were going to become venture scale, and there was not the best use of their time and resources, and just say, we are shutting it down and we're going to go pursue this other next thing. Now, usually you have another next thing that you've done some customer discovery on. I wouldn't shut down a profitable business until you have a more exciting venture that you want to move towards. But do not waste resources on a business that is trending down, where you're losing money, where there's no clear, that you don't have clear conviction you're going to be turning it around. I've had companies literally give investors back their money and shut the company down, and doing that earlier than later so that you can prevent unnecessary loss for your VCs they much prefer getting their money back and losing a percentage of their investment than losing it all once you've run out of money and can't find a business. But I do think you need to be talking to your investors and your board. Keep your costs as low as possible to maximize so you have as much time to figure it out, because burn kills companies. You cannot get your burn down if you don't have conviction that you're going to turn the corner. You've got to figure that out, because you got to buy yourself time to the point where like nobody takes a salary, nobody's doing anything, you're furloughing people. You just got to keep the company alive. If you've exhausted everything, you're out of money, you don't have conviction, there's no bootstrapping options, you've got to go take a job, you can't employ anyone else on your team, it's probably the time when you're looking at shutting the company down. That's my interpretation of the question. Does anyone else have an answer they'd like to offer?
I think you actually touched on it, and I think it's just like, for me, it's just the amount of pivoting. At least from my experience, we haven't shut anything down, but it's a matter of pivoting, and how do you actually learn it's time to do that? It's talking to your customer, keeping them engaged, making sure that all the stakeholders that you're actually, customer discovery does not stop. Just because you actually have a problem that is validated does not stop. You always need to continue talking to your customers throughout the time. And so that is the big piece that I would say, like when it comes to building, is like making sure and keeping in mind that your customer engagements is just like, it's part of the process of like your day-to-day work, is that you make sure that you understand your customer, you understand all the stakeholders that you're going to be collaborating with, because that goes a long way to actually making sure you're on track with how you actually you're building the right product market fit that you can actually get to deploy. Yeah.
All right, and Techstars, we have time for one more question, 2 more questions. All right, how to find a top talented co-founder when you have nothing but an idea? All right, that's a great question. Where did you guys find your co-founders when you had nothing but an idea?
I can. Bosco can go. You can go first.
Yeah, I mean, I have worked on, several ventures before. This one is my first kind of startup that I founded, but I've also, been part of early stage companies. Actually, interestingly, none of those examples were started from, an idea on a napkin. We actually first know each other first as a person, whether it's classmate or, biking buddies or whatever it is. And then we start to share who we are as a person, and then you get into what are we interested in, and then you get into what capabilities do we each have, and then we start to throw ideas. So maybe it's a little bit of a different route, because ultimately, it's great if there's an idea great enough that you can use that to, really be the centerpiece to connect people. But being a co-founder and, the founding team is a bit more than that. You need to really spend some time in knowing that person, and making sure that, you guys, again, share the same North Star, and are, compatible to each other, before you kickstart. It might take a bit longer, but it's always keeping an eye open to, who can you bring in, who can you partner with along the way, even before you have an idea.
Okay.
All right. We have time for one last question. And this one is from LinkedIn. So how do you determine whether a failure is a sign to pivot your business in a new direction or to persevere and refine your existing strategy?
Can you keep this? Sorry, was it possible to get that question back up? It was a long one.
Yes. Here it is.
So the question is, if you have a failure or data point of 1, as in it's hard to answer, from my perspective, it's hard to answer that question without a little bit more context on the failure. If you roll out a product and nobody wants to buy it, then that's probably a good sign that there's no market for it and you shouldn't keep doing it. But at Techstars, we practice much more of a lean methodology where you're out pitching and selling and doing the customer discovery as you're building. And so you're building towards a solution that your customers want. You might have failures around, I thought it was a particular profile, or I thought it was a particular pricing point, and you have to adapt and change. But I think, at least for a lot of the companies I work with, it would be a bit of a shock if you rolled out a product and it failed despite having had all the customer discovery and interest in purchasing it. So my response would be similar to what Bosco and Nyamitse said earlier, which is talk to customers. Just always, like in Techstars, you're going to be talking to dozens of customers a week. You're going to constantly be getting feedback on what you're going to market with, on your product, on your demo, on the value proposition. If you're not getting that positive feedback on it, then you're probably building the wrong thing and you're going to have to adapt. But even if you're building the right thing, you're still going to have to adapt, whether it's new functions or new markets or new pricing strategies. Never is what a company is doing on the way into Techstars exactly what they're doing on the way out, or 3 years later, the same thing. They're always adapting.
Excellent. Guys, we are out of time, but I want to say that this was an absolutely awesome event, and thank you all so much for taking the time to share your valuable insight, mistakes, and just the overall founder journey, as we remind founders to have the courage to dream big, stumble, and rise again. So any final thoughts just to close out? And do you guys want to maybe share any social media or where founders can contact you?
Well, first, I'd like to plug that we are opening up applications for Techstars LA's spring cohort next Tuesday. So we are looking for the next 12 companies to invest in. You can apply from any industry. We are also opening up the Techstars Healthcare Accelerator applications. And for that, we are looking for digital health and class 1 and class 2 medical device companies. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, just Matt Kozlov, Kozlov, and I'm putting my email address in the chat, matt.kozlov@techstars.com.
All right, that should wrap us up. Thank you all so much for coming, and we'll see you on the next event.